Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest here today. We are joined by pro MMA fighter Aaron Kennedy. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. We'll just get right into it. So I know you wrestled as a kid. What age did you get into that?
I think I was in second grade, so like 7 or 8 ish. Yeah.
Okay, you did that all throughout high school and everything like that.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I started wrestling in second grade, and by about sixth grade, I was wrestling pretty much all year round.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, that's how I grew up. Was just on the wrestling mats.
Yeah. Did you get into any other like high school sports? Were you a football, baseball guy, or just pretty much
No,
wrestling?
I wrestled all
Wow.
year round. By the time I was in high school, I'd wrestle a regular season, and then I'd get close to like 100 matches in the off season. So it was pretty much 12 months a year.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And then how did you like just first get interested in mixed martial arts?
So I got recruited to Bloomsburg University to wrestle, but as soon as I got there and I realized that in college you actually got to kind of pay attention and study,
Mhm.
I just able to balance the Division 1 sports. You're training twice a day all the time. It's hard. It's just tough.
Yeah.
So in the wrestling didn't work out for me in college, and I started boxing a little bit at just a gym down the road,
Mm.
and then those guys said, "Hey, you should probably try MMA, see what that's all about." So I did that, and I mean, my first fight, I choked the guy out in like 50 seconds or something, and I was like, you know what? It's a lot cooler than wrestling. I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna take it and run with it, and I did.
Mm. Okay. How do you think like your upbringing and maybe like early life experiences sort of influence you and your journey to become a fighter?
I mean, the way I was pretty intense for a kid, and the way I wrestled was always pretty aggressive in general. Uh, and I didn't really hear of mixed martial arts until I was in high school. I think I was like 10th or 11th grade the first time I watched a fight. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, man, I'd like to do that. But I was fully invested in wrestling. But I think it was a natural progression for me.
Mm.
I think it was going to happen one way or another.
Yeah. So it's a pretty smooth transition for you.
Yeah, I mean, as a wrestler, it's definitely difficult. Your body has certain built-in patterns as far as movement goes. So picking up striking is usually kind of difficult for
Mm.
for most. At least it was for me, and I think most wrestlers have a little bit of a tough time developing like smooth striking. But wrestling definitely helps you pick up the ground game, jiu-jitsu, submission grappling, and all that. It definitely gives you a big advantage in that regard.
Yeah, no, that's good that you mentioned the transition. Starting out as a wrestler is kind of tough because I know, like with a wrestler, it's usually your strong leg is first, and then orthodox, it's like opposite. So, did you
Yep.
struggle with some of that stuff in the beginning, or?
So I mean, it was kind of funny. So obviously, wrestling, I grow up. Most people do right leg forward,
Mhm.
which is up. So if you're right-handed in wrestling, usually you start with your right leg forward. In MMA, in the striking arts, typically if you're right-handed, you start with your left foot forward. So it was backwards, but the first couple years I was fighting, it was my first two amateur fights. I was training with my left leg forward, and then before my third one, I got nerve damage in my right arm.
Mhm.
So I switched stances. I started training with my right foot forward, so I have my power in my left hand.
Mhm.
And after that, I just started switching stances. So I trained like that leading up to that fight, and then I just, after that, I figured, I might as well just switch stances and get comfortable because you can create more angles if you're comfortable with both stances. There's more angles, there's more openings, and that's much more common today now too. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, you definitely see a lot of the best guys at the high level switch stances often and stuff like that. I'm sure some wrestlers even practice the other way just for different
yep.
looks and things like that. So that wasn't too difficult for you. But what would you say your biggest motivators just to step into the cage? I'm sure at this level you're not getting rich or anything like that. So what just motivates you to get in that cage every time?
It's in my blood, man. There's just a I just feel like it's what I'm meant to do. You know what I mean? I don't think I could stay away from it. That the short time where I stopped wrestling, I wasn't doing anything. My whole life fell apart. Like I just need that physical contact. I need that outlet for aggression. And just as soon as I step in that cage, man, I feel like I'm home.
Mm.
As soon as I hear that door clang shut, and you hear them slide the deadbolt, and I'm like, all right, this is it. Like I come alive.
Yeah.
So it's just my purpose.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I like to talk to different people about that switch. So like for you, it definitely seems like it's more innate. A lot of people sometimes struggle with that switch, like they have to like slap themselves, get themselves pumped up. For you, it seems a little more natural. Do you notice you have to do a switch, or is it
I
pretty easy
mean,
for you?
no, I'm calm. About 30 minutes before a fight, there's the switch goes off in my head.
Mm.
We try, and especially because I'm usually one of the last fights of the night. Me and my corners, we just hang out in the back, stay relaxed. But when we're about 2 fights away. It's just like I don't even have to do it. It's just a switch goes off in my head, and I start pacing, and I just feel the energy coming, and I'm like, all right, someone's about to get elbowed in the face. Like
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
know. And then once I get in there, the door shuts. I mean, I'm probably the calmest person in the room once the fight starts. I mean, I fight aggressive, high output, but mentally, like in my chest, I'm calm. I'm just like, all right, let's do this thing, and
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Good. And then how do you, like you mentioned a little bit, how do you stay motivated just when you're facing challenges or setbacks? Like you said, things kind of fell apart for you, but how do you find that inspiration or motivation again, like despite, maybe some challenges?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. It Because I mean, I've had all sorts of stuff go wrong. I mean, I expected I'd be a lot further in my career at this point, but I just keep working. I don't. I just don't know how to quit. It's so deep inside of me that I couldn't imagine giving it up. Like it's almost like automatic. It's like I busted my knee. It'll heal up and I'll get back to work. I don't know anything else. I'm compelled to do this. Like stuff goes wrong, and I'm like, well, shit, that sucks, and I just get over it. That sounds that doesn't sound the way I want it to sound, but I'm just compelled. I can't help it.
What's going on, everybody? I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Make sure you hit that like button. Let's get back into it. So being that it's, a few months out until you were to step in that cage again, how do you stay in shape now? You're probably not in like a training camp per se yet, but is it just regular fitness stuff, like everyday things, or how do you kind of stay in shape right now?
I mean, I train 7 days a week. During a fight camp, it's more times per day. But I mean, I have Mondays and Wednesdays are our striking days. Tuesdays and Thursdays are our grappling days. Saturday we have an open gym, and it just we do different things depending on the day and who's there. And Fridays and Sundays I have strength and conditioning. And then in addition to that, I do my own. I do like when I'm not training for a fight, just like my maintenance phase. I have one like long distance running day and one day where I do some bike sprints. And then I also have 3 flexibility sessions a week that I have a flexibility coach in addition to a strength and conditioning coach.
Hmm.
So
So going into a training camp, just if you could break down kind of each phase, like maybe 12 weeks out and then like 4 weeks out and then the week of the day before, like just how does that all lead up? How do you dial it down and get ready once it gets closer?
yeah, so 12 weeks out. I mean, usually we don't start a camp that early. It's usually 8 to 10 weeks. But I mean, 12 weeks out, I'm definitely making sure my diet's in check. Obviously, a big part of it is getting down to weight and making sure you're, physically in the best condition you be. But about 8 weeks out, all my conditioning, my strength and conditioning coach is really good, and he programs all the cardio stuff that I do to make sure that my endurance is where it needs to be. And then we pick a few specific skills that we work in the gym. We usually focus a couple strategies or techniques per fight, and that's kind of our focus. And then so we basically just focus the strategies techniques in the gym from I don't know weeks 8 to 4, and then about 3 and 4 weeks out we do our hard sparring. Call them grinders. So it's me. I'll spar one guy for 5 minutes, and then the next guy comes in, but it's a fresh guy each round. So that's just to make sure that your grit's there, your stamina, your endurance, and all that you're ready to go. So I'll spar maybe 5 people in a row, back to back to back, where they're only sparring for 5 minutes. I'm sparring for 25. So the idea is that you're training against someone with a fresh set of lungs who's not getting tired like you are.
Mm.
So that's the core of our fight camp usually.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Just your overall take on sparring, like Sean Strickland spars every single day. He's one of those, or like you get the Max Holloways where they're like, I don't spar at all anymore. How like beneficial do you think it is for you? How much do you think it could take away from possibly, your health or anything like that?
Well, so I think a lot of it depends on how you're sparring. I mean, there's, not that I know Sean personally, but there's guys like him who are just hopping in the gym, probably, starting fights, and that's not good. Your longevity and kind of the other thing that most people don't realize is when you're sparring super hard and that dude's trying to hurt you, you typically, most people are going to revert to their instincts. So you're not really able to work new techniques or, whatever the current tool is that you're working on. So I spar in a fight camp. I'm sparring most of the time. Most days I'm getting some sort of sparring or live rolling around component, but it's not crazy high intensity except for that 1 week or two. So it's lots of sparring, lots of like live rolling, working my current tool that I'm focused on, but it's not super high intensity. We're not trying to get anybody hurt, with the exception of that 1 week or two close to the fight. About 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have a week or two where it's pretty serious business, just to make sure that your nerves are ready, you're in shape, your eyes are focused, and your reflexes are dialed in.
Yeah. Have you ever had that issue where like you notice maybe there's a guy kind of something to prove and like you feel like he's trying to like make an example while he's sparring you? Have you ever had to check anybody, make sure you're sparring like with a pro that's going to take care of you, or have you ever had that instance?
Yeah, I mean that. Usually, when I have a contract signed, I don't spar with anybody that I'm not comfortable with. Like I don't, the guys in my gym they're all solid dudes. But if I go elsewhere, if someone new comes in, I don't bother with it. The only time that's really an issue though is someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. You get some guy in off the street who doesn't understand that sparring isn't fighting. Those are two different things.
Right.
And he might think he's a lot tougher than he is. So that's about the only time you encounter that. And I've certainly encountered that over the years. But those guys, you just kind of choke them out, and usually they check their ego after that.
Yeah, just humble him a little bit.
The more people train and fight, typically it's almost always the case that the more experienced a person is in martial arts, the cooler and more down to earth they are. For whatever, I mean, there's a number of reasons that could be the case, but yeah, that doesn't happen often.
Good. No, that's good. And then sort of what aspects of your training do you think like set you apart at this point in your career?
I mean, I'm without a doubt, conditioning wise, I'm definitely in better shape than anybody I've ever fought. Uh, I mean, that's kind of always. I mean, everybody works hard, but my conditioning and just my grit in general, I've certainly not fought anybody who can hang with that.
Mm.
Uh, Usually in between rounds, I'm just pacing back and forth, waiting for the next one, and I look over and that dude's sitting on the stool like
Yeah.
gasping for it. Yo,
Mhm.
you gonna ring the bell or what? Let's go.
Yeah, no, that can be a huge mental defeat, for that other guy to be sitting there sucking wind and he sees you just you don't even want the stool, like, I'm sure,
Oh, I mean, they don't. The commission that he doesn't want a stool. Don't bring it in. They
yeah,
know I'm down. And I mean, I do train like that. I train hard, specifically. Just I do a lot of mental training, but conditioning wise, as soon as that door shuts, you better believe I'm coming after you for 15 minutes straight or less. But if it goes 15 minutes, the guns are going to be blazing for 15 minutes, and you better watch out. So that's just my pace and intensity as a general thing. It's probably what sets me apart more than anything else.
okay. No, that's a huge advantage to have. I think especially at that level, a lot of guys just think they can rely on their skills and stuff like that. And then you get into those deep waters and realize, find out what they're really about, for better or worse.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's skill stuff. There's guys with great skill sets, but I focus on my endurance and my mental tenacity, because those are things I can always control. I can't necessarily control if my skill is better than that guy. I know it's my skill is the best it is at that moment, but I can always promise myself that no one's in better shape, and no one's more willing to just go into those deep waters than I am. So I rely on that quite a bit.
Mhm. Now I know with mixed martial arts, you train everything, but do you do any other like maybe not kickboxing competitively because your background is wrestling, but do you do jiu-jitsu tournaments or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done a number of jujitsu and grappling tournaments over the years. But yeah, I mean I grew up wrestling. I like to do jujitsu tournaments here and there just to stay sharp, and it's good. It's good to work your competition presence. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
compete a lot. There's a lot of intangible assets that you can gain from that. So I do tournaments a couple of times a year, usually with some of the other guys from my gym in between fights.
Yeah, I always thought jujitsu and like those grappling things are kind of like a sneaky accolade because you don't really see people post like I'm 20-2 in jujitsu. They only post like if they won a tournament. So you could have
Mhm.
some good like matches and notches on your belt, but maybe necessarily won a tournament, but you still have that experience.
I mean, I kind of like it that way.
Right.
They're grappling tournaments. You get to the big ones, they're not, but in general, you can go to them. They're real low key. I
Mm,
would like it out. I come from a gym where we just do no gi stuff. We're not like a traditional BJJ. So I don't have a belt, but I always I always get a kick out of registering for the expert division, and these guys all have their belts, and I just register as a white belt, and they're like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?"
right.
And then of course a point on me all day, and they're like, "Man, that's weird."
Yeah, that's hilarious. No, that's another huge point is like a black belt from like Pennsylvania is probably way different than a black belt in like a big city or Brazil or something like that. So I never knew how much that really even means anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I've rolled with guys, upper belts, and depending on the gym and where they're from, some dudes are, brown belts and they're scary good. Uh, whereas you might get a guy who's, is a black belt, but he's not that impressive. So there's definitely a lot of variation depending on where the person's from and how they're brought for it.
Yeah, I saw this video the other day that was actually talking about some gyms will like you can almost buy a belt. Like if you go to the gym for a certain amount of time, that's how you earn a blue belt. It's like, of course, the waters get muddied when you got stuff like that going on. So just interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing. Unfortunately, it seems more and more common because jujitsu, combat sports in general, becoming more popular. So there's more money to be made. But when you run in one of those guys who earned his belt, you know it. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. There's no faking it once you really get down to it.
yeah,
Um, so just coming up, I know you want to fight in December. What are some of your short term and then like long term goals for MMA?
I mean the long term goal is pretty simple: get to the UFC and then start smashing people and climb my way to the top. I mean that's always been the objective. And I mean short term, focus on the next fight ahead. Whoever I fight in December, I'll put together a little game plan. Each fight I try and sharpen specific skills and implement them. So I'll pick a skill set for the fight. I'll work it, and then in the fight, the goal is to execute it and kind of measure how much I grew training for that fight. But yeah, I mean that's the short term goal is just take one fight at a time, keep training, continue to dial myself in. I have different parts of my skill sets that I'm trying to improve upon. So that's how I kind of break down my goals is different skill sets that I'm working, and then each fight is almost like a checkpoint. Like I get to the fight, I applied the stuff that I was trying to improve, and by applying it against someone else who's trying to beat me up, that's how I can measure how much I grew with that.
Yeah. So just speaking of the UFC, like I've always wondered how it worked with things like the Ultimate Fighter House and then like the Contender Series. Have you or like anybody on your team ever tried to reach out to those types of things? Or like I just always wondered how they find those people and where that connection's made.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of ways that people go about it, but in general, you keep fighting, you keep winning, they come to you. If you're from a big name gym, um, who has connections with the UFC, I'm sure that's an advantage, and they can get a hold of guys and say, hey, come check out my guy. I'd like to have him on your show. So, but that's not the case for me. I'm from a small town. And that's the way I like it. I'm from Bloomsburg's not a big place, but I have a solid gym with a great team, and our goal is just keep winning, and the opportunities will appear.
Yeah. No, for sure. Do you now you're probably going in there looking for a finish all the time anyway. Do you ever feel any like obligation to like get a knockout or get some strikes to like, round out your resume, or you're not even thinking about that stuff at that point?
No, I mean I wouldn't say I feel an obligation. I love to put. I have a great I have a really great fan base. Like the if anything, I feel a bit of an obligation to entertain the people who support me. I have an awesome crowd of people who consistently show up. They take time out of their weekend, money out of their pocket to show up and chant my freaking name. So that's about the only thing I feel obligated to do is make sure that they get their money's worth. I'm never you'll never see me in a boring fight, and that's I definitely owe something to all those people who support me.
Yeah. Definitely. Now, I just want to take a little pivot here. I saw you do some stuff with like Bloomsburg Martial Arts Academy.
Yep.
What has that been like? Any expectations or surprises with that side of things, like coaching that you maybe didn't expect, or just have been rewards you didn't necessarily see coming?
Um, I mean, I love teaching. So my coach Joel Knott, he's been with me from the beginning. I started fighting 9 years ago. He's been with me every step of the way, and so in addition to learning about fighting from him, he kind of teaches me about teaching itself. Uh, you know, I guess the only thing I didn't expect, especially when I was younger, was how much I would learn by teaching others.
Mm.
So, people, thank me for teaching them and showing them stuff. And I'm like, the pleasure's all mine because in teaching, as you ask these questions and as I'm trying to teach you these things, I learn things myself.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my favorite thing about teaching others is I always end up learning as well.
Yeah, that was my next question. Actually, you already answered it. Just what do you think? Like, how do you improve from teaching? Is it more like a technical base or just like, wow, like me actually saying these things out loud, it reiterates it for myself and things like that? Or
Yeah. I mean, so, when if you're honest with yourself, I mean, that's so people, I guess the first thing that I always noticed was people would ask me questions I didn't know the answer to. So, and if you're a good self honest person, instead of making stuff up, you're like, you know what? I have no idea. Let me go talk to somebody who does. I'll figure it out. And so you learn in that way, but you also have to know the content very well. Like it's one thing to know how to execute a technique when you can explain it very clearly in a way that people understand. You know it on a deeper level. So your understanding of what you're teaching just deepens.
okay. I just want to make a jump to some of the bigger promotions. Like, are you obviously you probably watch UFC? Are you a hardcore fan? Do you follow Bellator, PFL, all those other ones, or you just kind of, follow what you can, or how much up to date are you with all that stuff?
I'm not I don't follow them like crazy. I, I focus on myself, my work, my training. If there's a fight that looks interesting, like I watched the Gaethje and Poirier fight because I love watching both of those guys fight. But I don't watch fights that often. If anything, I go on YouTube and I watch a lot of kickboxing right now, so I'll go and break down old kickboxing fights on YouTube. But I don't actually follow any of the major promotions. I figure I'll get there and then I'll pay attention to them.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it. But yeah, I was just interested if you had any thoughts on like PFL and they have like the point system and stuff. Like I only recently started to watch it and I'm trying to understand. I don't know how much I like that you get more points for like a knockout or a finish, or I still don't really understand it to be honest with you, but I didn't know if you had to take on that at all.
Yeah, no, I don't know much about them. The only thing that I and I just noticed this recently about PFL is they have the glasses for the ref, so you can see exactly what the ref is watching.
Oh wow.
I think that's pretty valuable because if there's a stoppage, you can see exactly what the ref was seeing in the moment he said, you know what, this is too much.
Hmm.
So I think that's a valuable tool, but that's about the only thing I know about the PFL.
Yeah. What is your view with TKOs? Because there's a lot of, there could be some blurred lines with if you're on the other end and like, are you wanting that ref to take some time so you get a chance to recover? Or are you like, maybe it's best that I don't take extra damage, or how do you feel? Probably on both sides of the coins. I don't know if you've ever been stopped or anything like that, but
I've never been stopped. So I don't have any firsthand experience with and part of it is until you're there you don't know, you know what I mean. So there's something to be said for that. I you know haven't worn those shoes yet.
mm,
um but yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, it's sometimes you need to stop it for sure. You just got to you don't need to be if you're getting your ass beat and there's just no chance that for some reason your brain didn't shut off yet, the ref's doing you a favor, and that's just reality. But I like to see them not make that call unless it's obvious. But that's the problem with the whole situation. It's not always obvious.
yeah.
So I think those refs are doing their best. You know.
That was amazing. I think that's all I have for you. Just what can we look out for from Aaron Kennedy in the future? If you get that fight in December, we can probably come back and announce that for you. But just what do we have to look forward to seeing from you next few months, next couple of years?
Just a lot of violence, man. A lot of violence. I got a lot of violence, inside of me, and I got to let it out. And
Yeah.
thankfully, fighting gives us a great way to do that. So this December 2nd, I think, is when I'll be fighting. That not certain, but it should be December 2nd, and a lot of violence.
Beautiful. Well, no, I look forward to that. Watching your journey. I'm sure I'll be in contact with you again. But yeah, thank you for coming on. We appreciate having you. Um,
Yeah,
enjoy your family event. I'm sure that'll be a blast.
yeah, for sure. All right, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. There you have it. That was pro mixed martial arts fighter Aaron Kennedy. I hope you enjoyed the video.